Is Braden Smith's efficiency cause for concern? Will Purdue's defense be a top defense in the nation? And can Purdue run the table into 2026? I'll answer all those questions and more today on Locked On Boilermakers.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network. Thank you for joining me today. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. I cover the Boilermakers every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I also write about Purdue for Purdue 24/7. And we got a fun, unique episode coming your way today. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So I say today's going to be a fun one. It's going to be unique because I have a bit of a different episode coming your way today. A new type of segment. It's called Buy, Sell, Hold. Boilermaker, Buy, Sell, Hold. I prepared 5 questions today that I'm going to say, and buy, I believe in it. Sell, I don't. Hold, well, we need to wait a little bit longer before I can form an opinion on it. I've got 5 questions. We'll talk about that. Going into the second segment, we're going to talk about whether the Boilermakers can run the table, go undefeated all the way into 2026. And then we'll finish off today's episode talking about bracketology. Joe Lunardi just put out a new one. We'll go over that, look at where Purdue's at, where some other teams in the Big Ten are. But I want to go ahead and jump into this buy, sell, hold. Boilermaker, buy, sell, hold. I'm going to list 5 questions for you guys. If you guys want to play along, make sure to leave a comment. I would love to hear all of your guys' opinions on these. And if you guys enjoy this, we can make this like a weekly thing where we look at what happened in the week. I answer these questions. So the first one that I feel like is very relevant to what we saw at Baja Mar is Braden Smith's efficiency cause for concern? Now, in my opinion, I'm going to say hold on this one. And the reason why I say hold and not sell is because it definitely could be cause for concern for Purdue. We saw that against Memphis where Braden Smith, he didn't shoot the ball at the best level. He shot 2 for 18, really bad efficiency in that game. And he really hasn't shot the ball at the level that we know that he's capable of. This year, in general, so far this year, he's only shooting 36% from field goal range, which is not where he wants to be. And we saw against Memphis, that really kind of hurt Purdue's momentum in that game. It was hard for them to keep going on offense because Braden Smith wasn't able to convert on his shots at a high efficiency. And a lot of that goes down to maybe Braden trying to do too much, trying to will his team back into that game and get a lead. And sometimes the shot selection wasn't the best. However, with Braden Smith, what you have to realize is even when he's not able to score the ball at a high rate, he's still able to get his teammates involved. So I'm not necessarily going to buy into that. It's a cause for concern right now because I do think that Braden Smith is going to improve this year. I think that he's going to get much better efficiency. He's going to improve efficiency-wise going throughout the year. However, I do think that if this happens, it could cost Purdue a game. We saw it against Memphis. If Purdue plays a team where they have less of a margin of error and Braden Smith can't get it going, he can't get that efficiency going, maybe Purdue does drop a game because of it. But right now, I'm not overly concerned. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Second question, is Purdue's defense going to be a liability? And I'm completely selling on this one. I don't agree with this one. Maybe at the beginning of the year, this is a conversation that could have been had because Purdue, they didn't really seem like a balanced team going into this year. If you look at KenPom, they were in about the 40s in terms of defense and then far and away the number 1 offense. And we've still seen some flashes surrounding that where Purdue's defense is not quite to the level where Purdue's offense is, but also with that, Purdue's offense is one of the most efficient offenses that we've ever seen in college basketball. So it's hard to maintain a defense that can balance out that offense. However, so far going into this year, I've honestly been impressed with the way that Purdue's defense has played. And KenPom certainly reflects that. KenPom has boosted Purdue all the way up from the 40s to number 17 in defensive rating after beating Texas Tech. And I think it really showed against Texas Tech. When that defense is going, and it was certainly going, you're able to force all types of turnovers against that team. And then once you get it done on defense, that directly correlates to your offense. The offense was clicking a lot better because of the way that the defense was playing against Texas Tech. So I'm out on the fact that Purdue's defense is going to hurt them this year. I think that the defense is going to be better than we saw last year, better than the year before. I honestly think that this defense is much improved from where they were, and I think that they're going to continue to get better throughout the year. Not worried about the defense. I think that the rebounding has certainly helped with that. I think that's going to be one of our questions. We'll certainly get to that, but I'm not buying in on the defense being a liability for Purdue this year. Third question, should we be worried about Gicarri Harris? Now, I'm buying into this one. I'm worried about Gicarri Harris, and I do think that there should be some concern surrounding him because, I mean, even going into last year, he did struggle to start out the season and started to get a little bit hot throughout the course of the year. He started to improve from three. So I'm not denying that that's impossible for what Gicarri Harris can do. I'm not saying that he can't improve this year, continue to develop, get more comfortable with that shot. However, I am concerned about him right now. I'm concerned about what he's going to be going into the rest of the year. And a lot of that is because I was extremely high on Gicarri Harris. I thought that he was going to be a special player this year. I thought that he deserved to be a starter after those exhibition games where he dropped 20, was super efficient from three. But going into the regular season, he really has struggled. And I hate to see it for him. He's played all 6 games for us, but only has 2.5 points average. And it really just comes down to the shooting percentage. He's only averaging 21% from the field, 25% from three. Gicarri Harris can certainly improve, but it makes me nervous. It gives me a little bit of anxiety. The fact that we thought going into this year he was going to bounce back. The fact that going through these exhibition games, he looked like he was a different player. And now it's like he just took a step back almost where he's not comfortable in that jump shot. He doesn't feel comfortable on the floor. I think that Gicarri Harris is going to be someone for Purdue this year that we really need down the stretch going into March, especially as a defender, his ability to shoot that three ball when we need it. Gicarri Harris is a really special player when he's clicking. Right now, he's not, and I do believe that that is cause for concern. Fourth question, is Purdue going to be the top rebounding team in the nation this year? I'm buying it. I think that Purdue can and absolutely will be the top rebounding team in the nation, if not top 3. And the reason I say this, we talked about it yesterday on the show, it's Oscar Cluff. You bring that guy in, and what he does for your ability to rebound goes far beyond just his numbers. It goes into TKR. TKR has taken a huge jump as a rebounder because of all the gravity Oscar Cluff has, where everyone's trying to box him out, force him off the glass. It opens up Trey Kaufman-Renn to honestly be a little bit overlooked in terms of being a rebounder. It certainly showed up in the games that TK has played this year. TK is averaging 12 rebounds, 11.8 to be exact. Oscar Cluff is averaging 11. Purdue is averaging 42.3 rebounds right now. They struggled, which is, so these numbers are a little bit skewed because TK, he didn't play the first couple games, but ever since he's been back and Oscar Cluff and Trey Kaufman-Renn have been in the same front court, I think that this team is honestly impossible to rebound against because you have two guys that are elite rebounders, top rebounders in the nation, and you can only go up against one of them. You can't get both of them. And we've seen that that's just allowed Purdue to out-rebound everyone that they've played once TKR has been healthy. Against Texas Tech, so many different opportunities. Against Alabama, so many second-chance opportunities. That's the reason they beat Alabama, was because of the rebounding numbers. And I think that that's going to continue throughout the course of the year. I think that when we're sitting in March, maybe sitting in April, we can look back at this team and say the rebounding was what got it done. This team is a number 1 rebounding team in the nation. So I'm buying into that one. The final question for the first edition of Boilermaker Buy, Sell, Hold. Can Purdue run the table, go undefeated into 2026? You're going to have to wait until the next segment to find out the answer to that one. I'm going to be answering that question and much more here next on Locked On Boilermakers. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you guys are just now seeing the channel, or if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do that. It would really help us out a lot. It means a ton to us, and it helps us to grow as we want to continue bringing daily Boilermaker content. I really appreciate you guys. But let's go ahead and jump in to the question that is asked. The question of the day: can the Boilermakers run the table into 2026? And what I mean by that, essentially, can Purdue finish off undefeated this year, the last month of the season? We're only a week away from conference play, which is a little insane. But with conference play, the rest of the non-con matchups, can Purdue finish those off undefeated going into 2026? Before I give the answer, I want to take a look at the schedule. So obviously, this Friday, we got Eastern Illinois. I'll have a preview video coming out maybe on Thanksgiving. We'll see what time that one comes out. But later this week, we'll talk that one. However, if Purdue loses that one, there's a lot of issues. I don't think that Purdue is going to lose against Eastern Illinois. They should open up as about 30-point favorites against that team. So with that, you just got to take care of business at Mackey, Black Friday. That one's going to be doing the double. I'm doing the double, hitting up Eastern Illinois at 11 a.m. and then Indiana, Purdue that evening. Certainly going to be a fun day, but Purdue should get it done against Eastern Illinois. That brings us into the next week at Rutgers. Now, this one is interesting, and not interesting because I think that Rutgers is necessarily a great team. They got really badly beat by Tennessee, 25 points. They haven't really beaten anybody. Their wins are American, Lehigh, Maine, and Rider. So I don't think that Purdue is going to have any troubles in terms of outmatching Rutgers. What does make me a little bit nervous is it feels like always, for some reason, that first conference game where it's on the road seems to give Purdue trouble. So that's one that you may be able to look at, say, I don't know if Purdue's going to struggle in this one, but historically, that has been the case. At Rutgers, though, I think that Purdue is just such a good team, so much better than Rutgers, that they'll be able to outmatch them. That one could come back to bite me. That's one that I look at and say, well, if something crazy happens, it doesn't surprise me. But I do think that Purdue handles Rutgers. I think that's one that Purdue will win. And then Iowa State. So this is the big one. And when you look at the schedule the rest of the way through 2025, Iowa State is by far the most talented team left. So they beat St. John's in the Players era. Iowa State still undefeated. This could easily be a top 10 matchup in Mackey Arena. I don't know quite yet how I feel about this Iowa State team. I think that they're extremely talented. You don't beat St. John's if you're not talented. However, I don't really know where St. John's is. Joshua Jefferson for Iowa State has pretty much been doing it all. He has 18.4 points. He's their leading scorer, tied with Tamin Lipsey. Joshua Jefferson, he's a forward, kind of like their stretch guy, power forward. But he also rebounds the ball really well, 7.8 rebounds. He's a senior for Iowa State, and he's kind of the guy that you look at and say, you got to beat this guy. And I honestly think that it's a good matchup for Purdue, and that's why I do start to feel a little bit more confident, plus this game being at Mackey Arena. But we've seen Purdue beat up on forwards all year long that are the leading scorers for their team, that are top guys, because we have Trey Kaufman-Renn, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. We have one of, if not the most talented front courts in the nation, so it's hard for guys like that to score on us. We saw that with JT Toppin, where he was really limited for a good portion of that game. I think that if Purdue is able to hold their identity, if they're able to limit Joshua Jefferson, they're going to find success, because that's the key. You got to limit other teams' number one guys. So far, We saw it with LeBaron Philon. Matt Painter has consistently drawn up these game plans to limit other teams' number one players. And it makes them play through other guys. It makes them look for different solutions to get things done. And it really hasn't worked out for anyone that Purdue has played so far this year, because Purdue is still undefeated with 2 top 15 wins under their belt. If they get another one against Iowa State, you can easily look at this and say, man, this is a number 1 seed resume, not even into 2026 yet. So Iowa State, that's definitely going to be the marquee game here, where you look at it and say, if Purdue goes undefeated, it's going to come down to this one. That's going to be a really fun one on CBS Saturday, December 6th. Moving on to Minnesota, that's one at home that I think that you get done and you start out 2-0 in conference play. I think that Minnesota could be a little underrated in terms of Big Ten teams this year, but they did get beat pretty bad by Missouri earlier in the year. Minnesota, it's one of those teams where I don't expect them to be really good. I don't expect them to be at the bottom of the Big Ten. It's possible they are. If they are, well, I'll eat my words. But I don't think that Purdue's going to have any trouble against Minnesota at home. That's one I look at, and it's hard to say chalk it up to a win in conference play, but in terms of the conference opponents that Purdue is going to play this year, Minnesota is one of the easier ones. Moving on, Marquette. Now, this is one that was kind of interesting to me when it came out. It was a game that I thought was going to be really fun because I like Shaka Smart. I like his teams, and I like Marquette. When they go into Purdue, I thought that was going to be a really fun matchup. But Marquette so far this year, they just haven't looked good. They haven't looked like a good team at all. They don't even look like a good Big East team. They look like they could be towards the middle or bottom of the Big East, which is really kind of crazy for where Marquette has been in previous years. Notably, they lose to Indiana by 23 points. Then they drop one to Maryland and Dayton. Really bad losses for Marquette. I think that if Purdue goes into this one, Marquette could give them trouble because I think that it'll be a motivated Marquette team. I don't think this is going to be a team that just lays down, but with the way that Marquette has been playing this year, I don't see any way that they go into Mackey and pull it out. Maybe they play motivated. Maybe they give Purdue a little bit of a scare like maybe a Memphis did earlier in the season, but I just don't know how a Marquette team that loses by 20 plus to Indiana goes into Mackey Arena and finds any level of genuine success against Purdue. So, I mean, if you look at this, really the only one that you look at and say, well, maybe is Iowa State, but still Purdue probably has a good leg up on Iowa State. I would say that they do have a good leg up on Iowa State as of now. So it's kind of easy to see how maybe we think that Purdue can run the table into 2026, can go undefeated in conference play. It's something that's certainly possible. But they're going to have to finish out the rest of the way. So Marquette is on December 13th, December 20th versus Auburn in Indianapolis. Don't know about Auburn this year under Stephen Pearl. I thought it was going to be still the same team because you have Tahab Pettiford. You don't lose any of your major guys. Yes, Bruce Pearl leaves, but I didn't know how much of a balance would be lost between coaches and then still having a lot of talent, still having a top guard in the nation. At times, Auburn has looked good. Also, at times, Auburn has struggled. If you look back to game 1 against Bethune-Cookman, that team almost beat Auburn, and like they seriously did. But Auburn's only loss is to Houston. They lose by 1, and they beat Oregon in a good game where they look pretty good. So right now, it's kind of difficult to get a read on this Auburn team. Once we get a little bit closer to December 20th, I think that we'll have a better outlook on where this Auburn team is. I think that Purdue will have a good chance, especially when you factor in it's a neutral court, but in Indianapolis, is it really, right? Is it really a neutral court? I still think that Purdue is going to beat Auburn, but Auburn could be a lot better of a team than we think right now because, I mean, they played Bethune-Cookman on opening night, and they only lose to Houston by 1. A lot of question marks surrounding this team. Could be good, could be bad. We'll certainly have to see. That brings us to our last matchup of the year against Kent State. Kent State is actually a really underrated MAC team, kind of like Akron, which we faced off earlier in the year. But, I mean, if we're being honest, I'm not going to predict Purdue to lose to a MAC team. So, I mean, with that being said, it really looks like there is an outlook where Purdue can run the table, go undefeated into 2026. Whether they're one of the only teams to do that, we'll have to see. But the schedule is certainly there. Purdue is certainly playing at a level where it makes sense. There is a real reality where Purdue can be undefeated going into 2026. And with that, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to predict right now on this show that Purdue will go undefeated all the way into 2026. We'll see what happens on January 3rd when they go into Wisconsin. That's going to be a tough game, but that'll be 2026. So we don't have to worry about that. We'll talk about it when the time comes. But here in this next segment, bracketology just came out. Joe Lunardi just released another edition of bracketology. I want to go over that, look at where Purdue's at, where some of these Big Ten teams are. We'll have that here next on Locked On Boilermakers. Joe Lunardi just released another edition of his famous bracketology. Purdue is now the top overall seed in bracketology. It was Houston a lot of the ways that he's had as the top overall seed. I think this is the first edition of bracketology that he has had Purdue as that number one overall seed, I should say. So that's good. That's a good tell of where Lunardi has Purdue. I feel like that was kind of the easy decision. That leaves Purdue in St. Louis playing as the number one. The 8-9 matchup in that one is USC and Clemson. That would be an interesting matchup because USC, they've struggled a little bit. I was watching that game the other night where it went to like 3 overtimes. They almost lost, somehow pulled it out against Troy. I don't know about USC. That's a team where kind of similar to, I think, Minnesota we talked about earlier. They could be at the middle tier, could be at the bottom. I don't know. Lunardi has them at an 8 seed. They could be solid. We'll have to see this year. Kentucky at a 5 seed. They struggled since they played us. I don't know what's going on over there right now at a 5 seed. That's not where the Wildcats wanted to be. Playing Akron, and you look at how good Akron is, 5-12 matchup. If Kentucky can improve, that's one where you look at and say, maybe Kentucky is on upset alert right now. Alabama is the 4 seed in the St. Louis bracket, playing off against High Point. If you look at it, Alabama, potential matchup with Purdue in the Sweet 16. That's the one you look at and say, hey, that one would be exciting. Kansas, Florida, that's the 6 and the 3 seed. Baylor, Louisville. So a lot of different fun matchups. You look at the opportunity for maybe a Florida or a Louisville Elite 8 matchup if Purdue can make it there. But when you look at what Purdue would need to do in order to make a Final Four, they need to win against the 16 seed. So just take care of business there. Beat either USC or Clemson, which I feel confident in. Both of those teams are in like the 50s in terms of KenPom. And then Sweet 16, probably have Kentucky or Alabama. You've proven that you can beat Alabama already at Alabama on a neutral court. I think that you have a better chance. However, where Alabama is in March, we don't know. And just keep in mind that this isn't certain, but it is a good read of some of the matchups that we may be able to have. So going to be able to get into the Sweet 16 as Purdue from that 1 seed, you got to beat Alabama. You got to beat maybe a Kentucky to get into the Elite 8. And that leaves you an Elite 8 matchup of either Louisville or Florida, maybe Kansas as the 6th seed if they can get there, Baylor, Iowa. Those are teams that could get there. Honestly, the way that this kind of plays out for you, if Purdue is the number 1 overall seed, I think it gives you a really good opportunity to get back to Indianapolis because, I mean, this looks like a pretty easy slate. And I don't mean to say easy because there are a lot of very talented teams in Purdue's bracket. However, these are teams that Purdue has either already beat or will have the potential to beat throughout this season. They've already beat Alabama. The Kentucky exhibition doesn't really count. They'll play Iowa this year. They'll play USC. So we'll have a good read. But looking at it here, this is about the best draw that you could possibly get in terms of where Purdue is, the ability for them to make a deep run this year. So that's something that is definitely you can be optimistic about if you're a Purdue fan. Indiana is listed at an 8 seed right now. I think that they'll honestly be up. I'm pretty impressed with where DeFreeze has them. We'll have to see if they're able to beat Kansas State here this weekend. That's going to be a good tell as to where that team is. I don't know if I'm necessarily very high on Kansas State, but that's going to be a good matchup. That's going to be one of their first real tests of the season. Indiana at an 8 seed. I'm trying to find more where all the Big Ten teams are. I'll count them up here in a second. Michigan State is a 3 seed against East Tennessee State. Michigan State, honestly, according to this, would have a decent route to making an Elite 8, Final Four type situation. They play off against either Vanderbilt or St. Louis at the 6 and 11. Michigan State's the 3 seed. I'm really impressed with where Michigan State has been so far this year. I think that Izzo has another really, really great team. And I didn't know going into the season, I thought that Michigan State would be good, but I didn't think that they would be in the tier with an Illinois or a Michigan. But they may be better than Michigan right now, honestly. I would be really impressed if Michigan State was able to finish off this year and make it as a 3 seed. But the way that they're playing right now, the basketball that they're playing right now, I could see them even making a 2 seed. So that's kind of my view on Michigan State. I think that that's another team where Izzo could have another deep run this year. That's going to be one to look out for. I believe we play Michigan State at home later in the season. Could be a top 10 matchup. And this is a good read because it gives you a lot of opportunities to see where this team is going to be at, give you a look at potential matchups and where Lunardi ranks some of these teams, because the ability to rank up, grab all these quad one and wins. Purdue's going to have the opportunity to get 4, I think, before 2026. They've already got 2 right now. The opportunity to just rack up more and more and more throughout the season. Going to be a ton of opportunities in conference play. That Michigan State game is going to be a really big one. Michigan is at the 2 seed in the South region. I would flip Michigan and Michigan State right now. I think that Michigan is being overrated because they haven't lost. But with that, they also have played a bunch of teams that they aren't on the same level as, really close. And I know that Purdue's done a similar thing at some points, but I just don't think Michigan is as good as people say they are right now. And I know I've said that Michigan, I'm really high on Michigan in the past, but I have changed my perspective because I've seen them play more. I've gotten a better read on where this team is. I don't know if Michigan will be a 2 seed. I know they have tons of guys. Yaxel, he's going to be really good. So Michigan can certainly develop, but right now I think that Michigan State is a better team than the Wolverines. Something to look at. They play in the same bracket as Houston, so that's going to be a tough one. Houston, I think, is a better team than Michigan, but even with Houston, they've struggled a little bit too. So I really don't know. It's hard to tell November 25th before Thanksgiving where all these teams are going to be come that point. But I mean, it is what it is. BYU's a 3 seed, Arkansas a 6, St. John's a 4, Oregon is a 9 seed, UCLA is a 5. That could be a fun one. If maybe Oregon is a 9 seed, I could see the potential to maybe upset a Houston. You never know what happens in that second round with the 8-9 playing off against the 1. We've seen that in years past. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon could pull something off crazy, but they got to beat Missouri first, and that's going to be a task for them. UCLA could be solid. Don't know quite yet. They have them as a 5 seed. Ohio State as a 7 seed. I think that they can be good. Got to figure it out on defense because that team is explosive on offense. Don't know about the defense. The one more matchup that I want to look at right now is Illinois at the 3 seed. I think Illinois, if they're a 3, they can make a run to the Final Four. And I'm so serious about that. They are in Arizona's bracket, and I think that Arizona is the second best team in the nation. So that's going to be a tough matchup. But if Illinois is a 3 seed in any other bracket, maybe the South, the East, against Houston as the 1, against Duke as the 1, I think that they can upset somebody because this Illinois team is battle-tested. They're mature. They're old. They're talented. If you look at them at the 3 seed, they beat South Dakota State. Your next matchup is either Texas Tech or Texas. I mean, we saw Texas Tech. I don't have any doubt in my mind that Illinois could beat them. Maybe Ohio State or a Gonzaga round 2. That's another one where I like Illinois in those matchups. Then you face off probably against Arizona in an Elite 8. I don't know if I like anybody outside of Purdue beating Arizona as of right now, the way that team has looked with Koa Pete. But if anyone's going to do it in the Big Ten, I think it's going to be Illinois. I think that's the number 2 team in the Big Ten behind Purdue right now. It's going to be a fun season. It's going to be a fun look at bracketology. We'll keep looking at it all year long. Like I said, make sure to comment. I'll leave the buy, sell, hold questions down below. Make sure to comment if you're interested. If you want to kind of compete with me, give your opinions out. We'll do that. Thank you guys again for joining me today on Locked On Boilermakers. Thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, consider checking out Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman. He breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, it's your team every day. Thank you guys. And as always, boiler up. Hammer down.